Okay, hello, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to introduce the subject of omega-3s. So this video is geared towards people who either they've heard of omega-3s or fish oil and they have the impression that they need them but they don't know why. I'm probably going to do 2 or 3 videos in this series. I'm going to try to keep things pretty basic. This video will also be useful for people like personal trainers or nutrition coaches who need talking points to help explain to their clients like why omega-3s can be beneficial. So again, I'm going to try to keep things pretty basic, and I'll also provide some resources, not necessarily in today's video, but before we wrap things up 2 or 3 videos from now, I'll provide some resources so you can dig into the subject further if you're interested. So one thing I want to start with is when we talk about omega-3s, and you can't talk about omega-3s without talking about omega-6s because they have a very important relationship. And you really can't understand omega-3s without some explanation of omega-6s. So the first thing I want to explain is the term essential fatty acids. I think a lot of people, when they hear essential fatty acids, they think essential means important, and that's part of what it means, but the other side of that is when anyone says that a nutrient is essential, what that means is that the human body can't get it without consuming it. Okay, so if we say like a nutrient is essential, that means that we have to eat something in order to either make that or get it. So there's a lot of examples of that, but again, I want to keep things kind of simple. So basically, when we talk about essential fatty acids, the only way you're going to get them is to consume them. Now, this is important because in the case of essential fatty acids, there'll be a lot of interesting and weird facts on this video, but the first interesting and weird fact is that the most abundant fat on the planet is actually contained in green leafy vegetables. So I know that virtually no one thinks about consuming green leafy vegetables for healthy fats, and that's actually fair, but alpha-linolenic acid is the parent fat for omega-3s. Now that is contained mostly in like green leafy vegetation. The thing is, humans are not very good at converting that parent fat, pronunciation, as we've joked in the past, is not my superpower. Alpha-linolenic acid, humans are not good at converting that into the fats that they need. So it's much easier for humans to get those fats from animal sources. There are a couple of things like algae and whatnot, and walnuts where people can get omega-3s, but I'm going to talk about that more in a video or two. I'll talk about food sources. Today I just want to get some just real basic stuff across. So alpha-linolenic acid is the parent fat for what we think of as the omega-3s. Now, linoleic acid is the parent fat for arachidonic acid, which is where the omega-6s come from. It's important to understand this because, again, like omega-6s and omega-3s, they have a relationship. So, and we'll get to that in a minute. My second interesting and weird fact that I want to talk about today is that as scientists have looked at different cultures and looked at different eating patterns, and especially in the last 100 years or so, as researchers have tried to figure out how different dietary fats impact human health, something that's come to light is that left to their own devices, a lot of populations will choose an eating pattern that will actually slow the metabolism down. Now, I know that sounds weird because most of us, especially if you're watching a channel like this, most of us thinking about being as like vibrant and physical as possible, or as healthy as possible, however you want to phrase it. But a lot of us think about doing everything we can to just be as good as we can for as long as we can. But the truth is, and I think this is a real key to sort of where a lot of Americans are today with their diet, and not just Americans, but a lot of like Western cultures, is again like left to their own device, a lot of populations will choose an eating pattern that will lead to a slower metabolism. Some of this is economic, and anyone who tries to eat healthy knows that it's more expensive to eat healthy than it is to eat just kind of, whatever. Much cheaper to go through a drive-through than to go to the store, and buy wild-caught salmon or game meat or something like that, or even to go fishing yourself or to go hunting yourself and prep your own food from that. Another factor is that on our cells, on the surface of our cells, you can think of it as, if you think of that as like real estate, that real estate is limited, and the omega-3s and the omega-6s compete with each other for space on the cell surface. So if someone consumes a lot of omega-6s, because of that can just create a deficiency in omega-3s by itself. So even if someone is supplementing with omega-3s, if they're still over-consuming too many omega-6s, they can still have a deficiency in omega-3s. Some researchers believe that the most important thing in this whole big topic is really just the ratio of omega-3s to omega-6s in your blood. And it's, to nail that down, it's thought that should be somewhere between like a 1-to-1, 1-to-2, or like a 1-to-3 ratio. Nobody really knows for sure. And the reason we don't know is because what we're actually looking at is a population that's gotten unhealthy because of the way that we eat. And there's, again, a lot of factors there, but but it's kind of considered that like a 1-to-1 ratio is probably best. Okay, so just trying to rein this in a little bit, or dial this in. So omega-3s and omega-6s are both essential. That means we have to eat them to get them. It also means that they are critical for human health. So if we end up with a severe omega-3 deficiency, it will cause health problems. If someone ends up with a severe omega-6 deficiency, that will also cause health problems. In fact, it can be fatal. Omega-6 deficiencies are much rarer. One of the reasons for this is that humans seem to be better at storing omega-6s than we are at storing omega-3s. Okay. There's also some consideration or some concern that omega-3s have the potential to go rancid, where omega-6s are more stable. So I think that kind of leads to continually getting in good sources of omega-3s is very important. Most of us don't need to worry about consuming omega-6s. So, and that's when you're looking at like supplementation. I think most people will benefit from supplementing with a good quality omega-3. I don't think hardly anyone needs to supplement with an omega-6. And sometimes you'll even see supplements that are like omega-3 6-9. Omega-9 is actually needs acid. That's something the body makes out of desperation when we have a deficiency in omega-3s and possibly omega-6s. So that's not something we need to supplement. The only reason I could see for someone to supplementing with omega-6s would be if they were following a extremely low-fat diet. Then maybe, but most people it's not necessary. And we'll talk about like food sources and how we get these things, like I said, probably in the next video. So if we underconsume omega-3s, that's an obviously will lead to a deficiency. But if we overconsume omega-6s, that also leads to a deficiency because of the enzymes we need to process those and because of limited space on the cells. Now, as far as like some of the things that omega-3s do, and this is something that, I mean, I've literally given talks on this that were an hour, and I mean, I don't even know how many books I have that cover the subject, so this is something you can dig into a lot. I'm just trying to give you some ideas. When somebody gets an adequate amount of omega-3 in their diet relative to the rest of the fats that they're getting, one of the things that happens, I should say, is it creates what's called an unsaturated cell membrane. Now, the types of dietary fats we consume have a very significant impact on the pliability of cells. Some researchers call this leaky. I hate that term, leaky. What they mean by that is that when cells have a higher percentage of omega-3s, they're more pliable, basically. So nutrients are released easier and nutrients are accepted easier. When cells become very saturated, they become rigid and they're not as likely to release nutrients. So for people that are trying to get leaner, this can be very problematic, because some researchers will describe it as the body actually gets into a state of anarchy where when everything is lined up to burn fat, the body won't burn fat just because the cells won't release fat. So when someone consumes a healthy amount of omega-3s, it can lead to better insulin sensitivity on a cellular level. So that's really important. Our EPA can have a positive effect on depression. EPA can also have a positive effect on anxiety. So there have been numerous studies that have shown both those things to be true. It can also have a positive effect on ADD and ADHD. Although I kind of have a suspicion that some ADD and some ADHD is just that kids have a lot of energy, and asking some young kids to go to school and sit down and be quiet first thing in the morning is stupid. I think kids should go to school and like run around for a while. They should have PE first and get some energy, burn off some energy, and then ask them to go sit down, and then probably have PE again. But anyway, there has been some research that has shown that getting in an adequate level of omega-3s can help with symptoms of ADD and ADHD. And I'm not saying people don't suffer from those things. I'm saying I think in a lot of times with young children, it's more of an energy level thing than an actual ADD or ADHD thing. Adequate levels of omega-3 have been shown to raise HDL cholesterol. DHA, which is one of the omega-3s, it accounts for 40% of the polyunsaturated fatty acids in your brain. So this kind of goes back to the the ADHD thing and a lot of other stuff. So if we get in an adequate amount of omega-3s, this has a positive impact on the literal structure of our brains. DHA is also used for 60% of the retina in your eye. Let's see here. DHA forms the covering of the nerves in the brain. Insulin sensitivity improves with cell membrane unsaturation. Adequate levels of omega fats have been shown to reduce fat in the liver. And omega-3s have been shown to cause as much as a 15 to 30% reduction in triglycerides. The final thing I'll say about that is EPA can reduce blood pressure through different mechanisms. Specifically, it can inhibit blood platelets from clumping together, and it can prevent plaque from forming in the arteries. So, okay, so today we've touched on just some bullet points of essential fatty acids, specifically omega-3s, and we've just kind of glossed over some of the things they do. Again, this wasn't intended to be an extensive video. Hopefully that's been helpful. I think in the next video what I'm going to do is go a little bit into some of the history of why we have an omega-3 deficiency with the food industry, basically. And then in the third video I'll talk about some food sources for omega-3s. So hopefully that'll be helpful. And that's it for today. Thank you.